At my daughter's wedding, I gave her a passbook I'd saved for 30 years. She laughed, "Just spare change, Mom," and threw it in the fountain. Her husband sneered, "Your mom's just a janitor." I said nothing. I walked to the fountain, reached into the cold water, and pulled out the dripping passbook. Then I left in silence. The next morning, I took it to the bank with other documents. The teller went pale. "Ma'am," she whispered, "please don't leave. I need to get the manager." "Hey there, quick question. Before we continue, have you ever been judged for what you do instead of who you are? Drop a comment, I read them all. And hit subscribe if you want more stories like this. Heads up, some details here are fictionalized for storytelling, but the lesson completely real. Now back to what happened at that bank. The fountain at the Sterling estate caught the afternoon light perfectly. Water arced through the air in crystalline streams as June's sun filtered through old oak trees. I stood at the edge of the reception watching my daughter's wedding celebration unfold across the manicured lawn. 200 guests, champagne glasses catching light laughter floating on warm breeze. Lauren, my only child, looked beautiful in her silk wedding dress that moved like water. Trevor Kingsley, her new husband, stood beside her with one hand on her waist, the other gesturing to his finance friends. He'd already loosened his tie, confident, comfortable, like a man who knew he'd won something. I'd been carrying the passbook in my purse all afternoon, the leather worn soft from 30 years of my fingers. I'd wrapped it in cream paper, tied it with a ribbon the color of Lauren's flowers. Simple the way I'd always kept things. I waited until my daughter stood alone near the fountain, then approached with the package extended. "Lauren, honey, I wanted to give you this." She turned and I saw that flicker of discomfort cross her face. She glanced over my shoulder, checking who might be watching. "Mom, hi." She took the package carefully. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to. It's something I've been saving for you." Before she could respond, Lillian Kingsley appeared at her elbow. My new son-in-law's mother had that talent materializing exactly when she wasn't wanted, trailing Chanel number. 5 and judgment in equal measure. "Oh, how lovely," Lillian said, her smile sharp as cut glass. "What do we have here?" Lauren fumbled with the ribbon. The passbook sat in her hands, dark leather-worn edges, First National Bank stamped in fading gold. A passbook. Lillian's laugh was light, musical, cruel. How positively vintage. I didn't realize these still existed. I watched embarrassment bloom pink across my daughter's cheekbones. "Mom," Lauren's voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "Please, not here." Trevor crossed the lawn in 3 strides, plucking the passbook from Lauren's hands, like it was a curiosity at a yard sale. "What's this, babe?" He flipped it open, scanning the first page. His eyebrows lifted. "A passbook? Seriously?" He looked at me with that smile that had charmed my daughter into this marriage. "Mrs. Collins, this is sweet, but we're pretty digital these days. Just spare change, right, babe?" I started to speak, started to tell him what that book really held. 30 years of sacrifice, every overtime shift, every property closing. But my daughter spoke first. "Just spare change, Mom." Her voice carried across the fountain, across the careful distance she'd been putting between us for years. "You shouldn't have." She held the passbook over the water. For a second, I thought she might hand it back. Instead, she opened her fingers. The leather book tumbled into the fountain with a splash that seemed too loud. It bobbed for a moment, pages swelling. Around us, I heard the muted laughter of wedding guests who'd turned to watch. Someone made a joke I couldn't quite hear, more laughter. I stood there in my good dress from Macy's and watched 30 years of my life float in champagne-tinted water. Lauren had already turned away, Trevor's arm around her shoulders, his mother Lillian steering them both toward the next photo opportunity. None of them looked back. I kicked off my dress shoes and stepped into the fountain. The water was cold, soaking through my pantyhose. I reached down and lifted the passbook out, water streaming from the leather, dripping onto the imported marble they'd chosen, because it photographed well. When I looked up, a few guests were still watching. Most had turned away, back to their champagne and conversations about summer houses and stock portfolios. I walked toward the parking lot, my wet shoes squeaking with each step, the passbook leaving a trail of water drops behind me like breadcrumbs. They thought it was over. They had no idea it was just beginning. That night, I sat in my studio apartment and let the silence settle around me like an old coat. The radiator hummed its usual rhythm. Outside, a car alarm went off 3 blocks away, then quit. My neighbors upstairs were gone for their night shifts at the hospital. Just me, the ticking kitchen clock, and the wet passbook I'd laid on a dish towel by the sink. I didn't cry. I'd learned a long time ago that tears were a luxury working women couldn't afford on the clock. The habit stuck. Instead, I walked to the bedroom closet and pushed aside the winter coats I'd been wearing since the 90s. In the back corner, beneath a loose floorboard, sat the safe. Small fireproof, bought at a hardware store closing sale in 1993. I worked the combination Lauren's birthday before she'd decided I was an embarrassment, and the door swung open. Inside, everything I'd never told my daughter about. Property deeds, 47 of them filed in alphabetical order by street name. Stock certificates I'd bought when everyone said the market was too risky for a woman with a mop and bucket. Bank statements from accounts she didn't know existed. I pulled out the folder labeled Real Estate Portfolio Current Value. $32 million. It had started in 1994. I was 32, divorced, raising Lauren alone on a janitor's salary. I'd been cleaning offices at Berkshire Properties for 3 years when I overheard executives discussing a foreclosed duplex going for $45,000. Everyone said it was a bad investment. I bought it anyway with every penny I'd saved, fixed it up myself from library books, plumbing, electrical, drywall, rented both units to families like mine, single mothers working 2 jobs. The rent covered my mortgage, then paid for the next property, then the next. $200 to $500 a month for 30 years. That's how you build an empire nobody sees. I never told Lauren because I wanted her to understand that money was earned, not given. That work had dignity. That a mother who cleaned toilets could still be worth respecting. I thought if she didn't know about the money, she'd love me for who I was. I was wrong. The girl who'd thrown that passbook into the fountain hadn't learned to value hard work. She'd learned to value appearance. My daughter had grown up ashamed of where she came from. I pulled out another document from the safe. Purchase agreement. The Sterling Estate. Acquired 2019 for $4.2 million through PC Holdings, LLC. My initials, my money, my property. The venue where my daughter had just gotten married, where she'd tossed away my gift in front of 200 people, belonged to me. Every imported marble stone, every manicured blade of grass, every fountain that had soaked my passbook. Lauren had chosen it because it was prestigious, because it made her look like she'd arrived somewhere important. She had no idea her mother owned the ground beneath her designer heels. I placed the Sterling Estate deed on the table. The passbook sat nearby, still damp. $8.7 million in that account. Emergency money I'd set aside separate from the properties. Money I'd planned to give her when she was ready. But just spare change, Mom, echoed in my mind. Tomorrow I'd go to the bank, not to save the money, to understand what to do with it, to decide what came next. I sat there until midnight, the documents spread around me like evidence at a trial. The radiator clicked off. The apartment grew cold. I didn't move. The passbook held $8.7 million, but that wasn't the real secret. The real secret was what I'd bought with the rest 30 years ago, the very ground they'd stood on to mock me. First National Bank opened at 9 a.m. I was there at 8:45, the dried passbook in a clear plastic folder. The lobby was all marble and morning light, the kind of space designed to make you feel small unless you had money. Downtown Boston on a Tuesday morning. I stood in the customer service line in my work clothes, khaki pants from Target, a blue cardigan I'd owned for 6 years. When I reached the counter, a young woman looked up. Her name tag said Megan. Early 20s, fresh-faced, probably 3 months out of college. Good morning. How can I help you? I slid the plastic folder across the polished counter. I need to check the balance on this account. Megan picked it up, tilting her head at the passbook like it was an artifact from a museum. Her fingers touched the champagne stains on the leather. A passbook. We don't see many of these anymore. She typed the account number into her computer, clicked twice, then stopped. Her fingers froze over the keyboard. She leaned closer to the screen. The professional smile disappeared. Ma'am, I need to get my manager. Please wait here. Within 30 seconds, a man in a gray suit appeared from a door marked Private Banking, 50s reading glasses on a chain. Gerald Stratton, branch manager. His handshake was firm. There seems to be something unusual about your account. No issue, just checking the balance. He glanced at Megan's screen. I watched his face change. Professional courtesy shifted into something else. Respect, maybe a little fear. Mrs. Collins, would you mind stepping into our private consultation room? Mrs. Dunford, our regional director, happens to be here today. 10 minutes later, I sat in a room that smelled like leather and old money. Helen Dunford, a woman in her 50s wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly rent, sat across from me handling the passbook carefully. Mrs. Collins, this account was opened in 1988. You've made regular deposits for 36 years, but never a withdrawal. She looked at me over her reading glasses. The current balance, including accumulated interest and dividends, is $8,700,000. I'd known the number, but hearing it spoken out loud made it real in a different way. That's correct. What brings you in today? I'd like to withdraw everything. Cashier's checks, please. Made out to myself. Gerald Stratton shifted his weight near the door. Mrs. Collins, that's highly unusual. Are you certain everything is... Everything is fine, but I'd appreciate discretion. Of course. Mrs. Dunford closed the folder. We can have the checks ready within 2 hours. Anything else we can help you with? Joe, I'd thought about this all night. About what I needed to know next. Yes, I need complete transaction records for the past 3 years. Every deposit, every statement. I paused. And I need the name of a reliable private investigator. Someone discreet. Mrs. Dunford didn't blink. In her world, wealthy clients asked for stranger things. I know someone. She pulled a business card from her desk and wrote a number on the back. Vincent Monroe, former FBI. He's handled sensitive matters for several of our clients. Tell him I referred you. The card was cream-colored, simple black text, Vincent Monroe, Private Investigations. Thank you. Return at noon for your checks. I'll be here. I left the consultation room and walked back through the marble lobby. The same customers who'd been in line were still there, dealing with overdraft fees and wire transfers. None of them looked up as I passed. At noon, I returned, Mrs. Dunford met me personally, handing over a leather portfolio containing 8 cashier's checks, each under the reporting threshold, and a sealed envelope with my transaction records. If you need anything else, Mrs. Collins, please don't hesitate to call. I appreciate your discretion. Always. I walked out of First National Bank into the afternoon sun. The portfolio felt light in my hands. $8.7 million reduced to paper I could carry in my purse. Vincent Monroe's business card was in my wallet. By sunset, he'd be following my son-in-law. By week's end, I'd know every secret Trevor Kingsley had tried to bury. 5 days after the bank withdrawal, I sat across from Vincent Monroe in a quiet corner of Mitchell's Coffee House. Vincent Monroe didn't look like a private investigator. He looked like someone's grandfather. 60-something silver hair, neatly trimmed reading glasses perched on his nose. He wore a cardigan over a button-down shirt and nursed a black coffee that had probably gone cold an hour ago. If you passed him on the street, you'd think he was retired, maybe volunteering at the library. That was exactly why he was good at his job. Mrs. Collins. He shook my hand with a firm grip. Helen Dunford speaks highly of you. She recommended you. And you need information about your son-in-law. He pulled a manila folder from the leather messenger bag beside him. I've been following Trevor Kingsley for 4 days. You're not going to like what I found. The coffee shop hummed with the usual Tuesday morning crowd. Students on laptops, retirees reading newspapers, a young mother with a stroller. Nobody paid attention to 2 people in the corner booth. Vincent opened the folder. Trevor Kingsley, 31 years old. Works at Harris Investment Management as a client portfolio manager. Salary $78,000 a year. He slid a photograph across the table. Trevor leaving his office building, phone pressed to his ear. That's his official income. And unofficially, he's been spending like he makes 5 times that. Vincent laid out credit card statements. Rolex watch $18,000. Car lease on a BMW $1,200 a month. Country club membership dinners at restaurants where the wine costs more than most people's weekly groceries. I studied the numbers. My daughter's new husband living a life his paycheck couldn't support. Where's the money coming from? Vincent pulled out another document. Offshore account, Cayman Islands. He's been making wire transfers for the past 18 months. Total amount moved $340,000. $340,000. From where? Client accounts at Harris Investment Management. Vincent's voice stayed level professional. He's been falsifying investment reports. Tells clients their portfolios are performing normally while he siphons money into his personal offshore account. Classic embezzlement scheme. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not surprise, exactly. Trevor had always seemed too smooth, too confident. But this was different from arrogance. This was criminal. How long before someone notices? Hard to say. He's been careful. Small amounts from multiple accounts buried in the paperwork. But eventually, Vincent shrugged. Someone will audit. Someone will ask questions. And when they do, this whole thing collapses. My daughter, I started, doesn't know. Vincent anticipated my question. I've been thorough. Lauren's name isn't on any of the offshore accounts. Her credit cards are separate. As far as I can tell, she's completely unaware. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt something worse. My daughter had married a thief, and she had no idea she was sleeping next to a man counting down to his own destruction. Mrs. Collins, this is federal crime territory. Securities fraud. If I found it, the FBI could too. Hell, they might already be looking. Vincent leaned forward. What do you want to do with this information? I stared at the documents spread across the table. Trevor's face in the surveillance photos, numbers that represented families whose savings he'd stolen. My daughter's signature on a marriage license next to his. I need to think. Take your time, but not too much time. These things have a way of exploding when you least expect it. I gathered the documents back into the folder and held it against my chest. I had two choices: warn Lauren and watch her defend him. Watch her call me crazy, paranoid, jealous that she'd married into the Kingsley family. Watch her choose Trevor over the truth. Or wait. Wait and let him show her exactly who he was when the pressure came. When his perfect life started cracking at the seams. When he had nowhere left to hide. I chose patience. And I chose to call someone else. Someone with a badge. The FBI field office in New Haven didn't list a phone number for anonymous tips. You had to submit online. I sat at the public library computer for 20 minutes crafting my message. The library was quiet that afternoon. A few teenagers doing homework at corner tables. An elderly man reading the newspaper in the periodicals section. The librarian behind the desk checking in returned books, her scanner beeping in steady rhythm. I'd chosen the library for a reason. No IP address traced back to my apartment. No digital footprints leading to my door. Just another anonymous user on a public terminal. The FBI portal was simpler than I expected. A form with empty boxes. Subject of tip. Nature of suspected crime. Details and evidence. I'd spent the walk from Mitchell's coffee house to the library scanning Vincent's documents with my phone. Now I opened them on the computer, pulling up each image to attach to the submission. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What was I doing? Turning in my daughter's husband to federal law enforcement, triggering an investigation that would destroy his career, his freedom, maybe his life. But then I thought about the numbers in Vincent's report, $340,000, not from Trevor's own money, from families who'd trusted him with their savings, retirement accounts, college funds, money that represented years of work of sacrifice of believing the financial system would protect them. Trevor hadn't just stolen from strangers, he'd stolen from people like me, working people who couldn't afford to lose a single dollar. This wasn't revenge, this was protection. I started typing. Subject securities fraud at Harris Investment Management. I have credible information about illegal activity by Trevor Kingsley, client, portfolio manager, over the past 18 months, Mr. Kingsley has systematically embezzled approximately $340,000 from client accounts into a personal offshore account registered in the Cayman Islands. I attached the documents, bank statements showing the wire transfers, screenshots of the falsified investment reports, photos of Trevor spending the Rolex, the BMW lease, the country club receipts. Everything Vincent had given me. Everything the FBI would need to start their own investigation. The attached evidence includes complete transaction records, offshore account numbers, and documentation of falsified client reports. I am submitting this information anonymously, but can provide additional details if needed. My cursor hovered over the submit button. Once I clicked it, there was no taking it back. The federal government would have Trevor Kingsley's name in their database. Somewhere, an FBI agent would open this file and start asking questions. Weeks from now, maybe months. Federal investigations move slowly, deliberately. I knew that from the detective shows Lauren used to watch when she was younger, back when we still spent Sunday evenings on the couch together. But eventually, they'd come for him. I clicked submit. A confirmation screen appeared. Your tip has been received. Reference number FC-2024-8847. If you need to provide additional information, use this number to reference your submission. I wrote the number on a scrap of paper and folded it into my wallet. The computer screen dimmed to its home page. I cleared the browser. History deleted the cookies, closed all the windows, erased every trace of what I'd just done. My phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out, a text from Lauren. "Mom, can we talk, Trevor, and I need to discuss something with you." My finger hovered over the reply button. I could call her right now, tell her what I'd found, warn her that her husband was a criminal, that federal agents would be knocking on their door. But she wouldn't believe me. She'd defend him. She'd think I was jealous, bitter, trying to ruin her marriage because I couldn't stand to see her happy. I turned the phone off. Not yet, not until she was ready to hear the truth. I closed the browser, cleared the history, and walked out into the afternoon sun. That same evening, I'd owned the Sterling estate for 5 years. Lauren had never asked how I could afford to attend her wedding there. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, the screen glowing blue in the dim apartment. Outside, the city hummed its usual evening rhythm. Car horns, distant sirens. My upstairs neighbors arguing about whose turn it was to do the dishes. I pulled up the spreadsheet I kept on my properties. 47 addresses listed in alphabetical order, purchase prices, current valuations, rental income, maintenance costs. The math I'd been doing in my head for 30 years now organized in neat columns. I scrolled down to the S's. Sterling Estate, LLC. Acquired March 2019. Purchase price $4.2 million. Current estimated value $6.8 million. I remembered the day I'd first walked through those gates. It was early spring March wind, still cold enough to cut through my jacket. The estate had been on the market for 8 months, a wedding venue that couldn't turn a profit. The previous owners had overinvested in renovations, underestimated operating costs, and watched their dream business bleed money until the bank foreclosed. Everyone said it was a bad investment, too expensive to maintain, too niche a market, too much risk. I bought it anyway. I'd learned something in 30 years of building a real estate portfolio. When everyone says something is impossible, they're usually just not looking at it the right way. The Sterling estate wasn't failing because it was a bad property. It was failing because it was being run by people who didn't understand the business. I paid cash through PC Holdings, LLC, my initials. My company, nobody's business but mine. Hired Philip Donovan to manage it. Philip had 20 years of experience running event venues and knew how to market to the kind of families who dreamed of fairy tale weddings without fairy tale budgets. Within 2 years, the Sterling estate was booked solid every weekend from May through October. Lauren had chosen it for her wedding because it showed up in all the wedding magazines, because it had the right kind of prestige, because marrying Trevor Kingsley at the Sterling estate meant she'd arrived somewhere important. She had no idea the marble floors she'd walked across, the fountain she'd thrown my gift into, the imported Italian stone she'd chosen for the photos. All of it belonged to her mother. I picked up my phone and dialed Philip's number. "Penelope." His voice was warm, professional. "Everything all right? I need you to do something unusual. Pull all future bookings under the Collins Kingsley name." A pause. Lauren's last name? Yes. May I ask why? Let's just say the family dynamic has changed. Understood. Anything else? Yes, I want to convert the property. I'm thinking affordable housing. 60 units, mixed-income families, teachers, nurses, service workers. The pause was longer this time. "Penelope, that's a significant renovation. We're talking millions of dollars. The venue is profitable. Are you sure?" "I'm sure. The Sterling estate has served its purpose. Now I want it to serve a better one. All right, I'll start getting preliminary plans together. Architecture permits zoning. This will take some time. I understand, but I want to start soon. Can I ask what changed? I looked at the spreadsheet on my screen, at the dollar amounts that represented decades of work, at the property that had hosted my daughter's wedding and her public humiliation of everything I'd built. I realized that beautiful buildings should house people who need them, not people who take them for granted. Philip was quiet for a moment. I'll have proposals for you by the end of the week. Thank you, Philip. I hung up and closed the laptop. The Sterling estate. The symbol of everything Lauren thought made her better than me would become home to janitors, teachers, nurses, people like me, people she'd spent her whole life trying not to be. Lauren called 17 times in 3 days. I let every call go to voicemail. I was working my regular night shift when the calls started coming in. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., cleaning the office building on Franklin Street where I'd worked for the past 12 years. 15 floors of empty cubicles, conference rooms, and executive suites. Just me, my cleaning cart, and the hum of fluorescent lights. My phone stayed in my locker in the janitorial closet on the basement level. That was the rule. No personal devices while on the clock. But even through the metal door, I could hear it buzzing. Again and again. Brenda, my coworker on the shift, raised her eyebrows as we passed each other in the third-floor hallway around midnight. Someone really wants to talk to you. She nodded toward the elevators, toward the basement, toward my phone vibrating itself across the locker shelf. They'll wait, I said and pushed my cart toward the next office. At 2 a.m., I took my break. 15 minutes in the basement break room with its flickering overhead light and coffee machine that had been broken since 2019. I retrieved my phone from the locker. 17 missed calls, all Lauren. 17 voicemails. I made a cup of tea from the hot water dispenser and sat at the small table phone in hand. Then I started listening. Voicemail 1 left at 8 p.m. Mom, I know you're upset about the wedding, about the Passbook thing. I'm sorry. Can we talk? Please call me back. Her voice was normal there. A little guilty, maybe. But still Lauren. Still my daughter trying to smooth things over the way she always did when she thought I was hurt. Voicemail 5 left at 11 p.m. Mom, where are you? Something's going on with Trevor's work. He's stressed out about something and won't tell me what. I could really use some advice. Call me. The guilt was gone. Now there was confusion. Worry creeping in at the edges. Voicemail 12 left Tuesday morning. Mom, we got this weird letter from the Sterling estate. Something about future event bookings and policy changes. Do you know anything about this Trevor's furious? He says someone's trying to sabotage us. Mom, please. What's happening? Panic starting to show. Voice higher, faster. Voicemail 17 left just an hour ago at 1 a.m. Mom, please. I need you. Her voice cracked on the last word. Not anger now, not confusion, fear, real fear. The kind I used to hear when she was little and had nightmares when she'd call for me in the dark. I held the phone against my ear and closed my eyes. The FBI inquiry had started. I knew it would take weeks, maybe months before they made a move. But even the beginning of a federal investigation left traces. Questions asked, phone calls monitored, bank accounts flagged. Trevor would feel it before he understood what it was, that pressure, that sense of walls closing in. And Lauren, caught in the middle, was starting to feel it too. I could call her back. Right now. Tell her to check Trevor's offshore accounts. Tell her to get a lawyer. Warn her that her husband was a criminal and her perfect life was about to detonate. But she wouldn't believe me. She'd defend him. She'd think I was jealous, bitter, trying to ruin her marriage because I couldn't accept that she'd chosen the Kingsley family over me. I almost called her back. Almost. Then I remembered the fountain, the laughter, just spare change, Mom. I put the phone back in my locker and went back to mopping floors. She'd call again. They always did when they needed something. 2 days after listening to Lauren's 17th voicemail, I made a decision. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea that had gone cold, my phone in my hand, and the scrap of paper from my wallet laid out in front of me. Reference number FC-2024-8847. The number that connected me to the anonymous tip I'd submitted from the library. I dialed the number for the FBI field office. It rang once. A woman answered. FBI Financial Crimes. How can I help you? Her voice was professional, efficient. Not cold, but not warm either. The voice of someone who dealt with criminals and witnesses all day and had learned to keep emotion out of it. My name is Penelope Collins. I submitted an anonymous tip about securities fraud. Reference number FC-2024-8847. I have additional information. A pause. I heard keyboard clicking. Mrs. Collins, we've been trying to locate you. The tone shifted slightly, more interested now. You're the tipster on the Morrison case. Kingsley, Trevor Kingsley. Right, the evidence you provided was very thorough. We've opened a preliminary investigation. More clicking. I'm Detective Andrea Thornton. I'm the lead on this case. Can you tell me what additional information you have? I thought about this moment for 2 days. How to say what I needed to say without sounding like a vengeful mother-in-law. How to make sure Lauren was protected while making sure Trevor faced consequences. I'd like to arrange a meeting, a specific meeting, at a specific time and place. Mrs. Collins, we don't typically stage confrontations. If you have evidence, we can meet at the field office, the Sterling Estate, 2 weeks from today, Saturday at 2 p.m. Trevor Kingsley will be there. So will his wife, my daughter. I want you there when certain things come to light. Silence on the other end. I could almost hear Detective Thornton weighing the irregularity of my request against whatever she'd seen in the evidence I'd submitted. Why the Sterling Estate specifically? Because I own it, and because that's where this all started. Another pause. You own the property. Through an LLC, yes, I can provide documentation. Mrs. Collins, this is highly unusual. We don't stage arrests at... I'm not asking you to arrest him there. I'm asking you to be there, to witness, to confirm what I'm about to reveal. I kept my voice steady. Detective Thornton, my daughter, had no knowledge of her husband's crimes. I need you to understand that before this goes any further. I have documentation proving she wasn't involved. But she needs to see the truth with her own eyes, and she needs to see it from someone with a badge, not from me. The silence stretched longer this time. You're protecting your daughter. I'm making sure she doesn't go down with him. I heard papers shuffling, more keyboard clicks. Send me everything you have. Documentation showing your daughter's non-involvement. Everything. Encrypted email. I'll send you a secure link. I'll send it tonight. And Mrs. Collins, if we agree to this meeting, we control how it proceeds. We're not performing for an audience. We're conducting a federal investigation. I understand. 2 weeks. Saturday at 2 p.m. The Sterling Estate. I'll confirm location details with you in a few days. Thank you, Detective. Don't thank me yet. If this goes sideways, it's on you. She hung up. I sat there for a moment, phone still in my hand, staring at the calendar on my wall. I picked up a red marker and drew a circle around the Saturday 2 weeks out. Then I wrote inside the circle 2 p.m. 14 days. 14 days until Lauren learned the truth about her husband, her mother, and the choices that defined both of them. 14 days to prepare for the reckoning. 10 days after I marked my calendar, the demolition crew arrived at the Sterling Estate on a Thursday morning. I was already there, hard hat on, watching the first wall come down. The ballroom had hosted 200 guests just 3 weeks ago. Now it was dust and broken marble. Roy the foreman walked over with his clipboard. He was in his 50s with the kind of weathered face that came from 30 years of construction work. Mrs. Collins, you sure about this? This place is a landmark. We could restore instead of... I'm sure, I said. This place is going to become home to 60 families. He nodded slowly like he'd heard stranger things, but not by much. Affordable housing, you said. Teachers, nurses, janitors. I watched another section of ornate crown molding crash to the floor. People like me. Roy's expression shifted. Not pity, respect. My sister's a nurse. Can't afford anything in this county. She will soon. The sound of the sledgehammer echoed through the empty halls. Chunk by chunk, the ballroom that had made my daughter feel superior was being reduced to rubble. The marble fountain, the one where my passbook had landed, was already gone, hauled away in pieces. I'd bought this estate 5 years ago when the previous owner went bankrupt. $4.2 million cash through my LLC. Philip had managed it quietly ever since booking weddings and corporate events. It had been profitable, but profit wasn't the point anymore. The sound of tires screeching on gravel made me turn. A white sedan Lauren's came to a stop in the parking lot, crooked across 2 spaces. The door flew open. Lauren stumbled out, still in pajama pants and an oversized sweatshirt, her hair unbrushed. She looked like she'd driven here the second she'd gotten word. Mom." She ran toward me, breathless. "What are you doing?" I didn't move, just stood there in my hard hat and work boots, surrounded by demolition workers and piles of debris. "What does it look like I'm doing?" "This is..." Lauren looked around wildly at the workers, at the rubble, at the gaping holes where walls used to be. "This is the Sterling estate. You can't just..." "I can, actually." "No, you don't understand. This is a historic venue. There are contracts. There are bookings. Trevor and I were going to have our anniversary party here next year. Those bookings have been canceled." Lauren froze. "What?" "I own it, Lauren." The color drained from her face. "You... what?" "I own the Sterling estate. Bought it in 2019. I gestured toward the construction crew. "And now I'm converting it into 60 units of affordable housing." She stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. You own this?" "Yes." "But..." Her voice cracked. "But you're a janitor." "I am," I said calmly. "I'm also a landlord. I own this estate and 46 other properties." Lauren's knees buckled. She sat down hard on a pile of broken marble, her hands shaking. 46 properties, give or take." She looked up at me, her face a mixture of shock and something I couldn't quite name. Betrayal, confusion, shame. "Why didn't you tell me? I wanted to see who you'd become." I knelt down beside her, my voice steady. "I wanted to know if you'd choose character or comfort. You chose comfort. You chose a man who looked good on paper. You chose a venue that made you feel important. Mom. And when I gave you that passbook money I'd saved for 30 years, you threw it in a fountain and laughed." Lauren's face crumpled. "I didn't know." "You didn't ask." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, looked at the screen, and her face went pale. "It's Trevor." Her voice was barely a whisper. He says we need to talk. Something about the FBI." Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. I didn't say anything. I just waited. Lauren didn't leave the construction site. She sat on a pile of broken marble and cried. I gave her a minute, 2, 3. Then I walked over and sat down beside her, not close enough to comfort, but close enough to be present. The marble was cold beneath me, sharp edges pressing through my jeans. Around us, the demolition crew had paused, giving us space. "I threw away $8.7 million, Lauren whispered. "I threw away. You threw away a passbook," I said quietly. "I'm still here." She looked at me, mascara streaked down her face. "Is this revenge? Are you punishing me?" "No." "Then what is this?" "Transformation." I gestured toward the construction site, the broken walls, the stripped ballroom. This building used to be a monument to wealth. Now it's going to be homes for 60 families. That's not revenge, that's purpose. Lauren's hands were still shaking. But you let me think you were poor. You let me be embarrassed. I wanted to know who you'd become without my money influencing you. And her voice cracked. "What did you find out?" I looked at her carefully. "I found out you married a man who makes you feel important. I found out you chose a venue over values. I found out you threw away a gift from your mother because it didn't look expensive enough." Lauren flinched. "That's not fair." "Fair." I shook my head. "Lauren, I spent 30 years cleaning offices so I could build something. Not for me, for you. And when I tried to give you part of it, you threw it in a fountain and laughed. I didn't know. You didn't ask." I let that sit for a moment. "But I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to give you a choice." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "What choice?" "The choice to see clearly. The choice to understand what actually matters." Lauren's phone buzzed again. "Trevor." She ignored it. "What about Trevor?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "What about the FBI?" "That's a conversation you need to have with your husband." Just tell me what's happening. You wouldn't believe me if I did. Mom, please. Come back here in 10 days, I said. Saturday, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Lauren stared at me. Why, what happens in 10 days? You'll see the truth, all of it. Will you forgive me? The question came out broken desperate. I stood up, slowly brushing marble dust off my jeans. Forgiveness isn't something you ask for, Lauren. It's something you earn. How do I earn it? Show up in 10 days, listen, decide who you want to be. Her phone rang again. She looked down at the screen, Trevor's name flashing, and then back up at me. Mom, I'm scared. Good, I said gently. Fear means you're paying attention. Is he in trouble? That depends on what he's done. I turned toward Roy, who was standing by the crew, waiting for my signal. But I can tell you this, in 10 days, you're going to have to choose between protecting him and protecting yourself. Choose wisely. Lauren stood up, legs unsteady, still clutching her phone. Will you be there at the meeting? I'll be here, 2 o'clock. Don't be late. She nodded, tears still streaming down her face, and started walking toward her car. Halfway across the parking lot, she stopped and turned back. I'm sorry, she called out. I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't respond. Not yet. Words were easy. Actions would tell me everything I needed to know. I watched her get into her car and drive away, phone still ringing in her hand. Then I turned back to Roy. Let's keep going, I said. We've got 60 families counting on us. Behind me, I heard Lauren's car tire screech as she pulled out of the lot. Her phone would keep ringing. Trevor would keep calling. And in 10 days, there would be nowhere left to hide. 4 days after I spoke with Lauren at the construction site, Detective Andrea Thornton called me. Mrs. Collins, we have enough evidence to proceed with an arrest. I was sitting in my apartment, the late afternoon sun slanting through the window. On the table in front of me was a calendar, Saturday, circled in red ink. Wait 4 more days, I said. Saturday, 2 o'clock. There was a pause on the other end. Mrs. Collins, we have a solid case. Wire transfers, falsified reports, testimony from Harris investment clients who've been asking questions. If Kingsley gets wind of this, he already has wind of it. That's the point. I don't follow. Detective, my daughter married this man, thinking he was someone he's not. If you arrest him now, she'll never see the truth. She'll think he's innocent, that he's being persecuted. She'll defend him. Another pause. And if we wait, she'll be there. She'll see him for exactly who he is. No filters, no excuses. Detective Thornton sighed. You're asking me to choreograph a confrontation. I'm asking you to let the truth do the work. I looked at the calendar again. 4 days, Detective. Then you can do whatever you need to do. Saturday at 2, she said finally. After that, we move. Understood. I hung up and grabbed my jacket. 20 minutes later, I was standing outside the office building on Franklin Street. The same building where I'd worked night shifts for 15 years, mopping floors and emptying trash cans. I knew this building like I knew my own hands. I knew which entrance the smokers used. I knew where the security cameras were positioned. I knew exactly where someone could stand and watch the lobby without being noticed. Trevor's office was on the 7th floor, Harris Investment Management. I'd cleaned his office 100 times before he even knew Lauren existed. I waited. At 5:15 p.m., Trevor emerged through the side exit. He looked terrible, wrinkled shirt tie, loosened hair, uncombed. His phone was pressed to his ear, and even from across the street, I could see the tension in his shoulders. He wasn't the polished, confident man who'd stood beside my daughter at the altar 3 weeks ago. He was unraveling. I followed at a distance, staying half a block behind. He walked 3 blocks to a coffee shop, Mitchell's, the same place I'd met Vincent Monroe. Trevor went inside, scanned the room, and sat down at a corner table. 5 minutes later, a man in his 60s walked in. Tall, gray-haired, expensive suit, Edmund Kingsley Sr., Trevor's father. I positioned myself near the window, far enough away that they wouldn't notice me close enough to watch. The conversation wasn't pleasant. Edmund leaned forward, gesturing sharply. Trevor shook his head, defensive. Edmund's face reddened. Trevor's hands clenched on the table. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. The body language said everything. Father was angry. Son was scared. The walls were closing in. After 10 minutes, Edmund stood abruptly, threw cash on the table, and walked out without looking back. Trevor sat there alone, staring at his coffee phone face down on the table. I watched him for another 5 minutes. He didn't move, just sat there frozen like a man waiting for a verdict he already knew. Then his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his face went pale. He answered, listened for 30 seconds, then hung up. His hands were shaking. I stepped back into the shadows as Trevor stood and walked toward the exit. He passed within 10 feet of me, but he didn't see me. He was too focused on whatever was falling apart inside his head. I watched him get into his car, hands trembling as he gripped the steering wheel. He sat there for a full minute before starting the engine. 4 more days. 4 days until he stood in front of my daughter and the truth walked through the door with a badge. I wasn't counting down for revenge. I was counting down for resolution. Saturday arrived with clear skies and sharp edges. The Sterling estate at 1:45 p.m. was nothing but bones. The ballroom where 200 guests had danced 3 weeks ago was now exposed rafters and stripped walls. The marble fountain was gone. The chandelier was gone. Even the floor had been torn up, revealing concrete underneath. I stood in the center of it all, hands in my pockets, watching dust motes drift through the afternoon light. This was where it started. This was where it would end. At 1:50 p.m., a car pulled into the gravel lot, Lauren's white sedan. She got out slowly, like she wasn't sure she wanted to be here. She was alone. She walked through the construction entrance, navigating around piles of debris, and stopped when she saw me. "Mom," her voice echoed in the empty space. "What is this?" "This is the place where you chose shame over love." Lauren flinched. "That's not fair." "It's accurate." I gestured around the gutted ballroom. "This is where you threw away a gift because it didn't look expensive enough. This is where you laughed while your new family mocked me." "I didn't laugh." "You didn't stop them either." Lauren's face crumpled, but before she could respond, the sound of another car interrupted us. A black BMW Trevor's. He got out first, followed by Lillian Kingsley. She was dressed like she was attending a board meeting, tailored suit heels too high for a construction site. Trevor looked worse than he had 4 days ago. Wrinkled pants, dark circles under his eyes, jaw tight. They walked toward us, Lillian's heels clicking on broken tile. "What's so urgent?" Trevor's voice was aggressive, but there was fear underneath it. "You said we needed to be here at 2 o'clock. Why?" "Nothing urgent," I said calmly. "Just the truth." Lillian looked around the demolished ballroom with visible disgust. "If this is about that ridiculous passbook..." "It's not about the passbook." "Then what?" Trevor demanded. I didn't answer, just looked at him steadily until he broke eye contact. Lauren stepped between us. "Mom, please, just tell us what's happening." "You'll see in 2 minutes." Trevor's phone buzzed. He looked at it and his face went pale. "Who else did you invite?" I checked my watch, 1:58 p.m. The sound of tires on gravel. Trevor turned toward the entrance, his whole body tensing. Lillian grabbed his arm. Lauren looked at me, then at the doorway, then back at me. "Mom," she whispered, "what did you do?" A car door slammed. Footsteps on gravel. Then a figure appeared in the doorway, backlit by afternoon sun. Detective Andrea Thornton. Her badge was clearly visible on her belt. Trevor's face drained of color completely. Lillian's grip on his arm tightened. Lauren's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Detective Thornton walked into the gutted ballroom, her footsteps echoing on concrete. She nodded at me, then turned her attention to Trevor. "Mr. Kingsley, I'm Detective Andrea Thornton with the FBI Financial Crimes Unit. I need to speak with you." Trevor's voice cracked. "I don't understand." "I think you do." Lauren turned to me, her face a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. "Mom, what is this?" I looked at my daughter carefully. "This is the moment you find out who you married. FBI. Lauren's voice was barely audible. "Trevor, what is she talking about?" Trevor didn't answer. He was staring at Detective Thornton like a man watching his entire life collapse. Lillian stepped forward. "This is absurd. My son is a respected investment manager. Whatever accusations..." "Mrs. Kingsley." Detective Thornton interrupted gently but firmly. "I suggest you let your son speak for himself." The silence in the demolished ballroom was absolute. Lauren looked at Trevor. Tell them this is a mistake." Trevor opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. Lauren's face crumpled. "Trevor, I smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. I saved you, I said quietly. Still with me. Comment, still here, so I know. Real talk. In my position, would you feel like a hero or feel guilty? Drop hero or guilty. Quick note, some details ahead are fictionalized for impact. Not your thing. No problem exit here. But if you're staying... What Trevor said next changed everything. Detective Andrea Thornton didn't waste time on pleasantries. She walked straight to Trevor. Mr. Kingsley, I'm with the FBI Financial Crimes Unit. We've been investigating irregularities at Harris Investment Management for the past 3 weeks. Trevor's jaw tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. Detective Thornton opened a folder. We have documentation of wire transfers totaling $340,000 from client accounts to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Your offshore account. That's... Trevor's voice cracked. That's not possible. You must have made a mistake. No mistake. We have bank statements, wire transfer receipts, falsified investment reports with your digital signature. She turned a page. Forensic accounting confirms everything. Lillian stepped forward, her voice sharp. My son would never... Mrs. Kingsley, your son has been systematically embezzling funds for 18 months. Detective Thornton's tone was professional but firm. We have testimony from 3 clients who noticed discrepancies. We have emails where Mr. Kingsley instructed his assistant to backdate reports. Lauren turned to me, her face pale. You called the FBI on my husband. I provided information about illegal activity, I said calmly. Illegal! Lauren's voice broke. Mom, how could you... Lauren, listen to me. Trevor grabbed her arm. Your mother is lying. She's manipulating you. She's trying to destroy us because you threw away that stupid passbook. Mr. Kingsley, Detective Thornton interrupted. This isn't a family dispute. This is securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering. The evidence is documented. Trevor's face twisted. It was temporary. I was going to pay it back. That passbook, I thought it had real money in it. I thought we could use it to cover... The words hung in the air. Lauren stepped back from him. You thought you could use my mother's money to cover your theft. No, that's not. Trevor looked around wildly at Detective Thornton, at me, at Lillian, at Lauren. You don't understand. The firm was pushing us for numbers. I had to show returns. You had to steal from your clients, Detective Thornton said flatly. It wasn't stealing, it was borrowing. I was going to... Trevor's voice rose, desperate. Do you know what it's like to have a wife who expects a certain lifestyle? To have in-laws who look down on you? To have a mother-in-law who's nothing but a janitor act like she's better than you? The word echoed in the demolished ballroom. Janitor. Lauren's face went white. Lillian gasped. Trevor, what? He whirled on his mother. It's true. Look at her. She cleans toilets for a living. She lives in a studio apartment, and she has the nerve to judge me. The silence was absolute. I didn't move, didn't flinch, just stood there watching Trevor Kingsley reveal exactly who he was. Detective Thornton closed her folder. Mr. Kingsley, I'm placing you under arrest for securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. You have the right to remain silent. No. Trevor backed toward the exit. This is insane. Lauren, tell them. Tell them your mother is crazy. Tell them anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Lauren. Trevor's voice cracked completely. Please. Lauren didn't move. She just stood there staring at the man she'd married 3 weeks ago, seeing him clearly for the first time. Detective Thornton pulled out handcuffs. You have the right to an attorney. This is because of that passbook. Trevor was shouting now. Because we laughed at your pathetic little gift, you're destroying my life over... The click of handcuffs cut him off. Lillian was crying. Lauren was frozen. Trevor was cuffed, still shouting about injustice, as Detective Thornton led him toward the exit. I watched them go. After the detective's car disappeared down the gravel drive, the estate fell silent except for wind through exposed rafters. The handcuffs had clicked shut. The camera flashed as he was led away. Lauren didn't cry. She just looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not shame, understanding. After the detective's car disappeared down the gravel drive, the estate fell silent except for wind through exposed rafters. Lillian had fled. I'd watched her stumble to her car, heels catching on broken tile, face buried in her hands. She didn't look back. Lauren sat on a block of concrete, staring at nothing. I waited. After 5 minutes, she spoke. "You knew, before the wedding. 3 weeks before? You hired a private investigator." "I did." Her voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me?" I walked closer but didn't sit. "Not yet." "Would you have believed me?" Lauren flinched. I don't know." "Yes, you do." I kept my voice steady. "You threw away a gift from your mother because it didn't look expensive enough. If I'd told you Trevor was a thief, you would have defended him. You would have told me I was jealous, that I was trying to ruin your happiness." She didn't argue, just sat there, shoulders shaking. "He said," her voice was barely audible, "he said he never loved me, that he only married me because he thought I had money." "I know. You knew that, too." I suspected. The background check showed he'd been living beyond his means for years. When he saw that passbook, he thought he'd hit the lottery. I paused. "He thought your mother was secretly rich and hiding it. He was right about the rich part, wrong about the hiding." Lauren looked up at me. Mascara streaked down her face. "Why did you live like that? The studio apartment, the night shifts. If you had $32 million, because money doesn't make you who you are. Work does. Character does." I gestured toward the demolished ballroom. "I bought my first property in 1994 with money I saved from cleaning offices. I built everything myself. I wanted you to see that. I wanted you to value it. But I didn't." "No, you didn't." She started crying, really crying now, the kind of sobs that shake your whole body. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." "I know." "Am I—" She looked up, terrified. "Am I going to be arrested, too?" "No." I finally sat down beside her on the concrete block. "You're protected. I gave the FBI documentation proving you knew nothing about Trevor's crimes. Bank statements showing you never accessed the offshore accounts. Emails showing you weren't involved in his work." Lauren's face crumpled. "You protected me, even after I threw away your gift, even after I laughed. That's what mothers do." We sat in silence for a moment, wind whistling through the skeleton of the estate. "What about the $8.7 million?" Lauren asked quietly. "The passbook money. It's in a trust for you when you're ready." "When I'm ready?" She looked at me. "How do I become ready?" I looked around at the demolished walls, the exposed foundation, the space that would soon become 60 homes for working families. The same way I did. You work, you build, you learn that money doesn't define your worth. What you do with it does. Lauren stood up slowly. She took one step toward me, then stopped. "Can you forgive me?" "I already have," I said quietly. "But forgiveness isn't enough. You have to decide who you want to be now." "I don't know who that is anymore." "Good. That means you're starting from scratch. That's the best place to start." Lauren looked around the construction site, the rubble, the exposed beams, the foundation waiting to be rebuilt. "What happens now?" I stood and brushed concrete dust off my jeans. "Now you go home, you think. And if you want to learn how to build something that matters, you come back next week. There's work to do." She nodded, tears still streaming. "I'll be here." "We'll see." The grand opening of Sterling Heights affordable housing was scheduled for a Saturday in October. 6 months had passed since Trevor's arrest. 6 months since Lauren sat on broken concrete and asked how to become ready. Now I stood at the edge of the crowd, watching the mayor cut a red ribbon in front of 60 newly constructed units. The ballroom that had hosted Lauren's wedding was gone. In its place, 6 three-story buildings, each with 10 apartments. Teachers, nurses, janitors, people like me. I wasn't standing at the podium. I didn't give speeches. I'd built this, that was enough. Lauren stood beside me in work clothes, jeans, steel-toed boots, a Sterling Heights property management jacket. Her clipboard was covered in notes. She'd spent the morning coordinating move-ins, checking unit readiness, answering questions from nervous families. She looked tired. She looked different. She looked like someone who'd earned something. The mayor finished his speech, something about community investment and affordable housing crises, and the crowd applauded. Families started moving toward their assigned units, keys in hand. A woman in her 40s approached us, Sandra Torres, a second-grade teacher. She'd been on the waiting list for 3 years. "Mrs. Collins." She looked at me hesitantly. I just wanted to say thank you. My daughter and we've been living in my car for 6 months. Her voice broke. This is everything. I shook her hand. You earned this spot. Your application showed 5 years of teaching. Perfect employment record. You didn't need charity. You needed a fair chance. Sandra wiped her eyes. Why did you do this, build all this? Because everyone deserves a home, no matter what their job is. She nodded and walked toward Building C, where her daughter was waiting by their front door. I felt Lauren shift beside me. When I looked over, her eyes were wet. You okay? I asked. Yeah, she wiped her face quickly. I'm watching you do what you've been doing for 30 years, and I never saw it. You see it now. A family of 4 walked past father in a maintenance uniform, mother in scrubs. Their 2 kids ran ahead toward Unit 2B, laughing. Lauren watched them. Philip says I'm improving. He says in another 6 months, I might be ready to manage a property on my own. Philip's a good teacher. So are you. We stood in silence for a moment. Families were moving boxes, kids were exploring playgrounds, someone was already setting up a grill in the community courtyard. I haven't taken a salary in 6 months, Lauren said quietly. I looked at her. I know. You know, Philip sends me monthly reports. She smiled faintly. Of course he does. She turned to face me. I wanted to earn your trust, not your money. You're doing that every day. Lauren's voice dropped to a whisper. Have I earned your forgiveness yet? I thought about the fountain, the passbook, the laughter, the wedding I'd paid for at a venue I owned while my daughter was embarrassed by me. You earned something better, I said. My respect. Lauren's face crumpled. She didn't hug me. We weren't there yet, but she stood closer. Thank you, Mom. Don't thank me. Keep working, keep showing up, keep proving you understand what matters. I will. A janitor from the hospital, Rita Santos, 62 years old, walked past carrying a box labeled kitchen. She waved at me. I waved back. Lauren noticed. You know her. We worked together 20 years ago. She's been on a waiting list for affordable housing since 2019. And now she has a home. As the sun set over Sterling Heights, families carried boxes into their new homes. Lauren and I stood side by side, not as strangers, not quite as mother and daughter yet, but as partners, building something that would outlast both of us. That night, I returned to my studio apartment, the same $800 a month space I'd lived in for 30 years. I could afford a mansion. I could afford 10 mansions, but I chose this place. I unlocked the safe behind the loose floorboard. Inside, property deeds for 47 addresses, investment portfolios worth $32 million, and a manila folder labeled Lauren Trust Fund Documentation. $8.7 million, still untouched, still waiting for the day she was truly ready. But tonight wasn't about the money. It was about what the money represented. 30 years of mopping floors, 30 years of night shifts and empty offices, 30 years of people walking past me like I was invisible. And now 60 families had homes because of those 30 years. On the wall above my small kitchen table, I'd framed something. Not a diploma, not a certificate. The passbook, the one Lauren had thrown into the fountain, dried, stained with champagne preserved behind glass. Just spare change, Mom. Those words had started everything. But Lauren hadn't thrown away money. She'd thrown away a lesson. The lesson was simple. Value isn't determined by price tags. It's determined by purpose. My phone rang. Lauren's name lit up the screen. For 6 months, I'd let most of her calls go to voicemail. Not out of anger, out of necessity. She needed to prove her commitment through work, not words. But tonight, I answered on the first ring. Mom, her voice was soft. I'm here. I just wanted to say thank you for not giving up on me. I never could have. There was a pause. Not awkward, just peaceful. I'll see you Monday morning, Lauren said. Philip wants me to review the tenant applications for the next property. I'll be there. Good night, Mom. Good night, Lauren. I hung up and looked around my studio apartment. 1 room, a bed, a kitchenette, a single window overlooking a parking lot. I could move tomorrow. I could live anywhere. But this place reminded me of something important. Wealth isn't what you own. It's what you build. For 30 years, people assumed I was poor because I cleaned offices. They assumed I was uneducated because I wore a janitor's uniform. They assumed I was insignificant because my work was invisible. My daughter called me a janitor like it was an insult. She didn't understand I wasn't just mopping floors. I was building foundations. Every dollar I saved bought another property. Every property created another home. Every home gave a family stability. And stability gave people teachers, nurses, janitors like me, the chance to build their own futures. The Passbook wasn't the real gift. The real gift was the lesson your value doesn't lie in your paycheck. It lies in your purpose. Tomorrow I'll go back to work, not because I need to, because I want to, because there's dignity in every job done well, because someone has to teach the next generation that work isn't about status, it's about service. And because my daughter finally understands it wasn't spare change, it was legacy. And to you, listening to this story, remember this. God gave us work not as punishment, but as purpose. When I was mopping those floors at 2 a.m. exhausted and invisible, I didn't realize God was building something through me. He was teaching me that every honest job, no matter how small it looks to others, has dignity in His eyes. God tests us not to break us, but to reveal who we truly are. When my daughter threw that passbook into the fountain, God was showing me what her heart valued. And when she came back 6 months later, willing to work without pay, He was showing me her transformation. Sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones we need most. God protects us even when we don't see it. I could have told Lauren about Trevor before the wedding, but God knew she wouldn't have listened. Sometimes protection looks like letting someone face consequences so they can finally see the truth. Now let me be honest about my story. Don't do what I did. Don't test your children by pretending to be poor. Don't wait for betrayal to teach lessons. Communicate. Be vulnerable. Share your story before crisis forces you to. I nearly lost my daughter forever because I chose silence over honesty. Family drama stories like mine, grandma's stories about inheritance and betrayal, they're everywhere. We've all seen family drama stories tear people apart. We've all heard grandma's stories about money destroying relationships. But here's what I learned. Family drama stories don't have to end in destruction if we choose purpose over pride. Grandma's stories can become legacy stories if we're willing to do the hard work of forgiveness and growth. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever felt underestimated because of your work? Have you watched money change someone you love? Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their labor has dignity. Subscribe to this channel for more real stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary choices, because your story matters and someone out there needs to hear it. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. Your time is valuable, and I'm honored you spent it here. Please note, some stories on this channel contain fictionalized elements created for educational purposes. If this content isn't for you, feel free to explore other videos that better suit your preferences. There's something here for everyone. God bless you, and remember, it's not spare change, it's legacy.